Welcome back. So now we're going to look at how we can create our SQL statements within Access. So the first thing we want to do is go to the Create ribbon and then click on Query Design. When the Show Table window pops up, we're just going to click Close. Notice when we click Close over in the View button, the SQL view appears. So we want to click on the SQL view. Now, as I mentioned, we're going to be working with the select statement. So by default, in the query, the select command appears, and you'll also notice the semicolon appears, because remember we have to end every select statement with a semicolon. So I'm just going to enter to move that semicolon down to the end, so I know that I won't type anything after the semicolon, because then it won't run. So our select statement again allows us to extract data from our database. And I'm going to add a space after the select statement. I want to select all of the records from our instructor info table. To select all, we use an asterisk. That means select all of the fields from that table. And then I'm going to press enter and put my next statement on the next line. For me, it's easier, so if I have an error, then it's easier to find that error. You can type everything across the same line. SQL doesn't matter how it's typed in, but we do have to have the space. So now I have to tell it where I want to get those records from. So the next command is from. And after I type in the command from, I want to tell Access where I'm getting those fields from, or in other words, which table. So now I type in the instructor info table. And now I can run my query, and I get all of the records from the instructor info table. Now, I'm just going to go back to my SQL view. Now let's say I don't want to extract all of the fields. I only want a couple of them. Instead of using the asterisk, I'm going to put the field names. So now I want the first name field. Each field is separated by a comma. So I want first name, comma, and last name. And it's still coming from the instructor info table. And then I run it, and now I just get my first name and my last name fields from the instructor info table. Now I'm going to go back to my SQL view, and I'm just going to add one more field. Let's say now I also want the city. I type my comma, space, and city and run it, and now I have the first name, last name, and city. Now I'm going to close this query and save the changes because we're going to come back to it later, and I'm just going to name this city. Now let's create another query in SQL. So again, I go to Create, Query Design, close the table, and then switch to the SQL view. Again, I'm just going to press enter a couple of times to move the semicolon down. And now let's say I want to select all records, again that's the asterisk, from the schedule master. So I have to type in the word from to let Access know where I'm getting the fields from, and then type in schedule master. Run the query. I get all 62 records and all of the fields for the schedule master. Now let's go back into the SQL view. Now again, let's say I only want certain columns. So I'm going to change the asterisk, and I'm going to type in, I want to get the course title. Remember, separate the fields by a comma, starts, room, course number and the hours. And now when I run it, I get only those fields for all of the records. Now let's say we want to limit our criteria. We only want to get the classes where the hours for the classes equals 12. So now we're going to add criteria. So we're going to go back to our SQL window, click after the from statement and press enter. And now we enter the criteria. And the criteria goes in the where statement or the where clause. So we're selecting the fields from the table where and then specify the criteria. So here our criteria is hours equals 12. So selecting the fields from the table where the criteria is hours equals 12 and then run it, and you'll notice that we only get 24 records. All of the hours is equal to 12. And now I'm going to open the city query. So I'm just going to open it in Design View, and it will take us into the SQL statement. And now let's add some criteria to this statement. So again, we said select first name, last name, and city from instructor info. And now we want to say where city equals Harrisonburg. Again, when you're typing in text for the value, it has to go inside of quotation marks. So now when I run that query, we only get the instructors that live in Harrisonburg. So that's basic SQL statements, and we'll get into more advanced SQL statements in the next lesson, how to extract data from multiple tables, and some more advanced where statements.